Welcome back to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people create themselves rather than find themselves, where the only entrance requirement is the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. And we're continuing our fascinating conversation with Ryan and his journeys through wrestling and mental health. It's impossible, Ryan, to have a mind of anxiety and a mind of gratitude at the same time. They cannot coexist. It's impossible.
Right. So I'm definitely still more anxious. I never feel those ways at the same time, but sometimes I can sit back and really go like, great, like everything that I have is fine and good, and I'm very content. Then I have like fleeting moments of anxiety still, where it's, and it is exactly what you're saying there. I have this expectation that I've set for myself. And it's as like lenient as I'll let it be. Like if it was really stressing me out, I'd be exercising more. But it just is like in the smallest way. Thank goodness for medication.
Well, better living through chemistry.
That's worked out for me. I won't get into like my light script, but like just to help with my generalized anxiety, I don't run into attacks as hard as I was definitely a year ago.
Well, anxiety is people often ask, if they're asked, what is the present most people present with when they go to therapy? They would probably think it's depression. It's anxiety by far. So what we try to do is stay in front of depression. I always tell people, I said, you know what? It's easier to prevent a riot than to stop one. And I always encourage people with generalized anxiety disorder to take their medication every day.
Yep.
Smokey the Bear says only you can prevent forest fires.
And so far, yeah, that's very consistently worked out for me. Yeah. Well, and I just remember feeling like the change within the month, and just not like thought spiraling was like the coolest thing, and moving on in like the span of not just like a whole day, but like within maybe the half hour. Sometimes you need it. If we're live and we're in video, look, sometimes you just need it. Don't be ashamed. Just like go after that stuff. It's great. I feel awesome. Like I feel much better than I did a year ago.
Wow.
It was so difficult to manage and like self-regulate.
Sometimes it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it was. Totally. The word's impossible. It was impossible for me to self-regulate in like 2022. I couldn't do it. And I was affected by events. And then I became just like the worst possible, like least secure, most anxiety-ridden version of myself. And the most help I went for was like, I started talking to a therapist again, but like, to be honest, I was like freaking out every like day about what happened and how other people were reacting to it, and like all this shit that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
But I was hurt for what it's worth. Like give myself some grace in that.
Well, it sounds like there was a lot of factors involved there.
A ton. Yeah.
Generally, with generalized anxiety, what happens is we have a overstimulated amygdala. That's one of the oldest parts of your brain.
Yeah, and survival instinct kind of.
It's the flight, flight, or freeze, and it holds a lot of memories, particularly negative ones.
Don't they call it like your lizard brain, kind of?
That they call it the lizard brain. Yeah, we have two amygdalas.
I liked to play with the idea of like using the amygdala as like the lizard character, and he's always like fighting from that like perspective, and like that helped me dehumanize the character, make it more like, I don't know, slimy.
Well, that sounds like fun. So maybe that's where you got the gecko character, huh?
Oh, they just gave it to me, and then I had to go and find that. Like once they were like, you're this lizard, and whatever, I had to figure out what that was. I remember them telling me to like watch Cirque du Soleil, and to see how some of the like animals moved around. Not so much like worrying about the technique of my maneuvers, though. Like I tried to think about that, but really just how to get into this character. And I tried to shift and think creatively, like how to pull emotion away from that character the first couple times I worked with it, which is hard because you have to use your whole body. You don't have your face. So it still wound up like, even though I was trying to think of that early on, and I think how the way he falls and what we call cells and acts like he's hurt is still like cartoonish and goofy. I didn't quite get what I was aiming for all of the time.
Well, what I'm impressed with now, what I'm looking at, Ryan, is that you're a thinker and that there's constantly
I'm always
something going
thinking.
on inside. There's a lot of chatter in between your ears.
Yeah. I probably like I've given up on the concept that I'm going to like annoy the heck out of people by opening up so much. I don't care if anyone's annoyed anymore. Um, I guess I don't care about that anymore. And I don't feel like I have personally anything that like warrants hiding from people I care about, or even people who like don't care about me.
Hmm.
Yeah, So I just go on, and that constant like thrumming of my attention deficit disorder brain, the caffeine I just drank, like yeah. And I love to be locked in like this right now. Just, thanks for
I
letting me
love
talk
it.
so much.
So I have this tattoo on the other arm. It's do no harm.
Mhm.
As long as you're doing no intentional harm to anyone or anything,
Right.
do as you choose.
And my point of harm, like where I think I do harm is when I get frustrated and angry. Um, yeah, and I've tried my whole life to not be like the outburst machines that my folks, my older brother, like the like the environment that I was fostered in, that my mind was like fostered in, how I like learned how to socially interact with people, like was home life was so aggressive, and it took me a long time to see that that wasn't normal in a lot of homes, to like make friends with people, and you don't see everything, but I could see clear as day that it wasn't the same. I think about like uh, so an old friend has his permit, and he's driving with his dad in the passenger seat and gets cut off, and he flips someone the bird, and his dad slaps his hand, back of his hand, and he's right, like there's no need to do any of that. And his dad turns around to me and apologizes to me for having to see that. And I remember, it like affects me still to this day, because I was flabbergasted by like by the notion that an adult was going to apologize to me for witnessing like violence. Like he was very concerned and like very apologetic, and like uh that stuck as such a moment of being like, oh, this is so that's not like normal at all. And they were both like very embarrassed, and like they'd had this kind of important like private moment in front of me. And honestly, like this guy shouldn't have been flipping people the bird in traffic with his dad was right. Um, it just wasn't to the extent of like what I knew a hand to be from a father, and I almost like laugh about it.
I usually ask people when they realized that their own home life was dysfunctional.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's usually by observing other families.
I think I knew before, but didn't have like I hadn't processed the thoughts, but I had this feeling like something was wrong, and there were a lot of things like there's plenty I wouldn't like to unpack, but there was a lot, um, hmm. And yeah, I didn't until I was about like a teenager and saw that, and then that was just like the spark that opened up like me figuring out that I needed to separate, which took years and years, like over a decade. But not physically. Like eventually, I just stopped speaking. Like so, I don't speak with my immediate family.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been that way for about 5, going to be 6 years, and like I don't want to sound mean or anything,
Well,
but
you don't have to.
it's been the best for me. It's it's been best for me in my like survival and my like ability to find myself.
So here's what I ask people, Ryan. I
Yeah,
said what about when they're dealing with family members like that. I
sure.
ask them if you weren't genetically linked to this person, would they be a person that you would invite to a party or want to be around, or invite to your kid's party, or just go out for a picnic with them? And
No.
generally they say no. And I say, well, then give me a reason why, just because you're genetically linked to this person, that you have to like them.
Yeah, I agree, and like I've thought about that a lot. Um, like if it weren't for the blood, right? Like what would I have going on there? And it's like a lot of time invested, but like I didn't make that choice to be there. And I heard a lot about how I wasn't part of the plan and how that affected things. And so like, it's really easy for me to think about, no, I wouldn't want them around. We would host. Okay.
Well,
I'll unpack something. Or should I? How much time do we have? All right. What were you going to say before I
was going to say everyone's a product of their past. You can choose whether to become a victim of it.
Yeah.
But if you want to unpack something, please do.
The victim of it,
it
like,
could probably help somebody else.
I don't know. It's just
listening.
It's just a really morbid story, but I had to like hear it over and over again. So let me torture you with this. And you talk about like inviting people to parties and would you do this? Like, no. Whenever we'd have like a gathering at the house, and not often, but when we did, and one that stands out was like high school graduation party, which by the end of high school, I was like so checked out. I was hardly there. But I remember like this story finally being told in front of my friends and their parents, and the vibe in the backyard changing. And I'd heard it my whole life. I'm like, kind of dealt with the reality of it. I don't know why until that point I didn't think about it like, wow, this is fucking weird and wrong. But well, Mom was getting tipsy and she starts telling this story about when I was an infant. And the gist of it is like, and from what I've pieced together from talking to some of my extended family, is like the financial trouble was understood because I was born and that changed my brother's life. But I heard how my folks talked about like issues of money and survival and, you know, the roof over our heads and eating my whole life. What I didn't realize was like that affected my older brother when he was very young. So the gist of it is he hung me with a bathrobe belt, and I'm like nothing years old, and goes and takes my mom on this wild goose chase around the house looking for his bathrobe belt. So I'd been like suffocating for, I don't know, minutes before like I got any help. And it's just like an insane story to tell at social gatherings, but it like in this way for so many years, it was mentally putting me in my place and reminding me like how at risk my survival was, even in the environment I was in. So like there was a lot of time I spent like under the threat of violence and being like, oh yeah, I'm under threat of death right now. And that was a reality for me in development for so long. And I think is like the base of a lot of my feeling of anxiety. When it's so heavy that like my breathing's short and I can't approach a situation normally or talk to someone even, like it's the feeling that someone's coming to like beat the shit out of me or like asphyxiate me for a while or like just demean me in general. So,
well, that's a type of childhood trauma that can, unless it's dealt with, can last a lifetime.
Yeah. And so like I'm constantly working on it, but it's there, you know? And it's really been like the time and separation away from that environment that's allowed me to like start to grow between myself and like my past trauma. But you know, like,
well, you had to have been walking around fearful all the time.
all the time. I like hiding out in my room a lot, or just trying to get away. Like the whole summer before we moved to Virginia, I was just hanging out with this older kid, like being miscreants because like for the first time and like never coming home that summer and being very latchkey. And that was freedom, but also like it was an introduction to like shady behavior and stuff like that. But God, if I didn't need that, like every bit of escape.
When you're marginalized in your own home.
It's weird to think about myself as, well, marginalized. I paint myself in the picture that like, look, I'm a cis white man who grew up in like suburban America and like things weren't so bad, you know, but like also, yeah, within the house, like things were crazy. I shudder to use the C word, but there was definitely like unchecked. I don't even know what to call it because I don't want to like try to diagnose my parents, but like there were some unchecked issues going on in their own past trauma. Anytime that like that was inflicted on me, there was like the levy of like, also I had it this much worse, which is like an unbearable weight when you've just been like smacked around with rings and your face is bleeding for listening to Chumbawamba. Sorry.
Were you able to share some of this with any teachers at school or a guidance counselor?
I never thought of it as big enough to. And then there were things looking back where it's like insane, and it would have torn like there's like criminal. There's all of it's pretty much criminal behavior when you look at it. And I had been given the speech about Child Protective Services and a foster family that would be worse for me, that would take me in for state benefit, and then abuse me worse. So like I pretty much was like, I can't run, but these are the conditions and they're not so bad. And then you get to zoom out. Like I got to grow up and zoom out and take a look at the world and see a lot of like, just to see that that's not normal. It's not okay. And then like to know how consistently it was justified to me, and how like, God, if I didn't spend the time to re-examine this stuff, like how warped my perception of the world could or would be. Like a lot of that behavior and that environment leaves me fearful to like then start my own family. So I don't think I will. I think I could be like the dad who stepped up, like a stepdad. But like I don't know that I could like rear my own youth. And then looking at the state of the world, no. But like I'm just like, I'm way too fearful to become anything like them too.
Well, you said that big word, fear. Fear is the most fundamental emotion that people feel. And Ryan, there's folks out there that are going to be listening to this podcast saying, Ryan's telling my story. We'll be continuing our conversation with Ryan next week, a fascinating conversation delving into the depths of his soul, and a free prescription for you: fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug that television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience without expectations, fish without bait. Do a kindness for another and do a kindness for yourself. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. If we're all not the divine's children, then none of us are. Be good to yourself today and every day. Namaste.
If you're interested in flying the colors of fishing without bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.